it's Liz Donatelli, host of romance novel talk show, Reader Seeks Romance. I am joined by my new sidekick, Gail. Hi, Gail.
Hi, Liz. Hey, I want to congratulate you on your second season of Reader Seeks Romance. Tell me, who did you interview today?
Well, Gail, I interviewed Darynda Jones, the New York Times bestselling author of the Charlie Davidson paranormal romance series.
Can we look forward to some hot sex scenes in her books?
Yes, there are sex scenes in Darynda's books.
Am I on Facebook?
Dad, get out! Hi, Darynda. Welcome to Reader Seeks Romance.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
It's a pleasure to have you here. We connected via the show.
Yes.
I was super excited to be scrolling through my YouTube comments for episodes and see Darynda Jones. I was like, oh, that must be a fan maybe who took her name. And then when I realized it was you, I was so excited. I was telling my friends.
I discovered your channel when I was like deep in the writer's cave. I was on deadline and I was about to just killing myself trying to, and it was kind of an escape. I would go watch a little video and then come back and I'd go watch another one. And they just made me happy. And I love hearing romance, all about romance and what other writers process and how other writers deal with things. And it just really took the stress down, you know what I mean? So
oh my God, this is oh, you've made my day. Will you start a Reader Seeks Romance fan club and serve as its president?
Of course. So the series is about a female private investigator who was born the Grim Reaper. And so each book has a mystery, and she falls in love with the son of Satan.
So now, according to Walmart.com, believe it or not, I found some fun facts, and one of them is that the concept for the first book in the Charlie Davidson series, First Grave on the Right, came about while you were working as a sign language interpreter. So could you share that story?
Yes, well, what happened was I went to school, became an interpreter, was interpreting full-time at that point. And, you know, it's funny because I've always written, always. And so sign language interpreting, interpreting probably any language, it's just so fun because you get to really explore language, both of the languages that you're interpreting in and out of. And yeah, so it just made me want to write more, I feel like. So yeah, I was laying in bed, waiting for my turn in the shower one morning, and just thinking about language and writing and what I wanted to work on next. And Charlie popped into my head. So, and that's, awesome. She was the first thing that just, in all her glory.
In what way would you say that learning sign language has helped you as a writer?
You know, it's funny because when you're an interpreter, you're literally a walking thesaurus, okay? So somebody says something and you have to figure out, okay, it really means this. Like if somebody says they were shooting the breeze, okay? They don't mean shooting with a gun, the breeze. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So you literally have to think, what does shooting the breeze mean? Chatting, they were chatting. So, you know, little things like that. And so it just constantly keeps you in tune with word meaning and with word origins and how to play with language. And that was a big one for me.
In 2019, the final book in the Charlie Davidson series was published, Summoned to 13th Grave. Was it always your plan to end the series on book 13?
No, for some reason, we were thinking, I don't know why, where we came up with this idea, but we were thinking 15 books. And then my editor came back and she said, no, we should end it at 13 because, you know, it's paranormal. And so I kind of panicked. I had to wrap up a lot of stuff there and in the last two books, and but it worked out.
How did your fans react to your ending the series?
Most of them were very upset with me. They were very upset with the book. They loved the book, but they were still upset, you know, didn't want it to end. And so I had to promise a couple of things so that I didn't get any more death threats.
Oh my goodness, seriously? Real death threats?
Just they were all joking. I'm assuming they were all joking, but yes, I did get several.
Okay.
But yes, I promised a spinoff, so that made everybody happy. And yeah, and also I did a novella for 1001 Dark Nights that actually continued the story too. So that really made everyone happy. So. So the story is about Garrett Swopes, who is in the Charlie books all the way through. And he's kind of like a sidekick in a way, a sexy sidekick. But yeah, I actually had many readers who wanted Charlie just as much with Garrett as they wanted her with Reyes. So it was a very interesting journey. And so, yeah, it's about Garrett and his love interest and what happens to them when little Beep, the Elwyn, goes missing. So she's the daughter that is going to save the world, and she goes missing. So yeah, they had to find her.
How did it feel to revisit Charlie's world?
Oh, gosh, you know, I think I got rather lazy writing Charlie because I would just sit down and I was just her. I was just so immersed in it after 13 books, you know. And I didn't even have to think about how to set things up. I mean, obviously the story, but the environment, the world, all of that. I mean, it's kind of already there. You know, I just kind of had to do a little rehashing. And so I got a little lazy, but going back into it is kind of like coming home after being gone for a long time, you know, it just felt really good.
Would you say that you miss writing Charlie the most? Or is there another character in this series that you miss even more?
Probably Charlie, as far as writing, because it's like I just channeled her. It was just so effortless, you know. She was who she was, and I didn't have to think about it. And
so tell me a little bit about your new paranormal women's fiction series, Betwixt and Between.
Yes. The story is actually about a woman who is 44 years old, recently divorced, and she inherits a house from a complete stranger in a state she swears she's never been to, but of course she has, and learns that she is from a long line of witches. The hero lives in the basement of this house that she inherits. So yeah.
A basement hunk?
Yeah, a basement hunk.
I kind of dig that.
It was a Kathleen Woodwis, like so many of friends that I know. And it was actually, the first one that I read was what do you call it? Like a digest version in Good Housekeeping. And it was A Rose in Winter, I believe. Yes, A Rose in Winter. I read it in the dentist's office, and I came home and I told my mom, I stole the magazine. That's how much I loved it. I did. I stole the magazine. I didn't ask, I stole it. And I came home and I showed it to my mom. I was like, Mom, this is the best story I've ever read. I never read a romance. And she's like, duh. And she shows me her shelf of like 3 or 4 Kathleen Woodwis books that she already had. And she's like, you have to read all these. And then after I read the first one, I was like, Mother, holy cow, I didn't know you had that in you.
I have prepared follow-up questions to answers that you have given in past interviews.
Okay.
Number 1, from your blog, what is the most surprising thing you discovered while writing your books? Your answer was, I'm always surprised when they don't suck as bad as I was worried they would. My question is, what criticism do you dread the most?
What criticism? So probably, I think just that they didn't like the story. Just overall, they didn't like the story, or they didn't like my protagonist, because I love all of my protagonists so much. So that would be the probably the worst. Now I do actually really get upset. No, upset's not the right word. Everybody's different, and I understand that, and especially when you're talking about humor. So when people don't get the humor in them, I'm like, really? And I just kind of wonder, because they'll be like, everybody said this book was funny, and it wasn't funny at all. It was stupid. I'm like, oh, well, To each his own.
Romance Rehab blog in 2017. You were asked if you could co-author a book with anyone, who would it be and why? And the author could be living or dead. You said Jane Austen. So how would you divvy up the writing duties? Would you handle the sex and she handles the sarcasm? How do you envision that going down?
Yeah, you know, and that's the thing. I have been asked by several people to co-write. And I don't know. How do you divvy it up? I even went to a panel one time just because I was trying to figure that out. I think that since Jane is obviously an expert of her time, she would have to do most of the dialogue. Maybe I would go in and if I could add in humor, but she's so funny anyway that she has her moments, you know. But yeah, I would probably just add a bunch of humor and she would get annoyed with me and then tell me we couldn't be friends anymore. And then I would be sad. But yeah.
It would be a short-lived collaboration. Is
Probably. I don't think she would put up with me very long, considering she is who she is and she's amazing. But then I would beg to be let back into her life and it would just get awkward.
Author Jacqueline Frank's blog 2011, she asked you to share your most embarrassing moment with a fan or another author. Do you happen to remember what you said?
No, I have no clue.
Well, I'm here to remind you. You mentioned hunting down best-selling author Jane Ann Krentz at an RWA, or Romance Writers of America convention, to thank her for giving an amazing blurb for First Grave on the Right, and she appeared to not know who you were.
She didn't know me, and now I understand completely. Yeah, when you give blurbs, you have no idea. You just read the book and you don't know what these people look like, or because they're new usually, you know. And so I completely understand now. But at the time, she gave me such a glowing blurb, like this quote that was amazing. I thought, well, she must love me. I'm going to go say hi. Yes, no clue who I was. I was just like, well, I'm Darynda Jones, and I wrote First Grave on the Right. She's just looking at me like, honestly, it was almost like she didn't even know the book. I was like, I feel so bad right now. I'm going to go away.
Does that remain your most embarrassing moment with a fan or another author?
I can't imagine that it is. Probably not. I went into one workshop. Here's a really good one. But it was only embarrassing to me because nobody else knew. And this is a horrible story. So I won't tell you who the author was. Okay. But I went into this workshop on writing sex scenes, okay? And it was an author who did not, still to this day, basically I got in an argument with her son, and so she doesn't like me. She didn't like me, but I was still going to go to her workshop, you know? And so she gave an example of how not to write a sex scene. It was from my book. That she read from a piece of paper. Nobody knew it was my book. But as she read it, of course, taken completely out of context, this sex scene, of course, the entire room was laughing. And also, by the way, this was at a science fiction convention, not a romance, I mean, like, I was floored. Anybody was in there, but of course, it was almost all men because it was writing about sex. They like to pretend like they don't like romance in their books, please. But yeah, it was interesting. And she, just read straight one of my sex scenes, and everybody laughed, and I laughed too because I wasn't about to let anybody know that was mine.
Well, Darynda, you have been such a good sport to make time to talk to Reader Seeks Romance, your most favorite YouTube romance novel talk show. So I thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.